by fans, for fans, the Hog Style. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hog Style. Jamal here with you. Look, I know a lot of us have been, a lot of us, meaning us as in fans, I'm not a part of this bunch, but a lot of us have been rooting for 7-9. Losing out actually after we had, I think, 5 wins on the season, and we're 5-8.
There was that segment.
Yes. So saying this how we ended up at 7-9 anyway, it's kind of frustrating. And I know I have some co-hosts with me. I'll introduce them soon. But it's kind of frustrating knowing that we ended up 7-9 the way we ended up 7-9. I'm pretty pissed off. And I'm also pretty pissed off that I trusted the Redskins financially and they let me down. Before I get into any of the things that happened today on the game, during the game, I have 2 co-hosts with me, the same guys from the pregame show, Steve and Alex. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, just, I'd like to congratulate the Redskins for an outstanding effort today. They look
awesome
like,
game. Awesome game.
Yeah, just awesome
Played
effort,
great.
Awesome game. You guys look like you were ready to play, looked like you wanted to win. So happy I had to sit through that game. What was interesting is I tweeted out a couple pictures of the sports bar I go to when locally I can't get these games on TV.
Yeah.
And if you guys noticed out there, I tweeted out a picture in the first half and the second half, and in neither picture was another customer in the shot. Don't worry, NFL, you haven't alienated anyone by your antics this year.
Yeah, well, it's the fact that you're in Houston where they had a meaningless game too.
Well, yeah, the fact that the Texans really stunk this year has affected it, but I'm just here to tell you that I've been going to that sports bar to watch these games for 2 seasons now. This is the 3rd season,
right.
And this year has been a complete disaster for that place. And I've talked to the manager about it, and they say, they've just lost a ton of business on Sundays, because the NFL has alienated the people like me who hate these protests, and they've also alienated the people on the other side who think that the NFL has treated the protesters unfairly. And so it's a rare thing when you're an organization, you can alienate both sides of an issue. It really
takes a matchful bad PR job to do that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You've alienated both sides of an issue through your incompetence and stupidity. And what it does is it affects the little local sports bars like this place I go to, because they lose a ton of business.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's true. I will also think, on a Sunday where you're relaxing, it doesn't hurt to, it's just me. It's just me. Maybe I like to go just get some drinks and have some good food and watch a ton of football games. But I did see the picture of Steve, and to see it, a little, that naked, it's kind of, it is a kind of a problem. But at the same time, I do feel like the Cowboys and Texans being out of the playoff race does contribute. I think the bar was probably trying to find an excuse.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt that that's affected it too. But, the Texans have had other bad seasons, and that place has never been like that.
Sure. Well, I want to say,
fair.
before we get too deep into this, I do want to put out something positive. Steve, this name well. Kelly, he had a kid today.
Yes.
And so,
Yay.
Jamal, you don't know this guy, but Kelly was one of the guys who
No,
helped us
Jamal was
start
on a.
this
Jamal did a
podcast.
show.
Talking
No,
about
Jamal
when he
did a show with
yeah,
Kelly.
we
Oh, you did a show with Kelly?
Jamal knows
right.
Kelly.
That's when I was out.
Yeah. Congratulations to the big dog.
Yeah. He had his kid today around the 3rd quarter of this game. So,
Oh man,
don't save the game and
Congrats to
great
show
Kelly.
your daughter, but,
you guys need to text him and tell him don't watch the game.
I'm sure he knows.
Yeah, especially if he got the.
If I know
ESPN
Kelly,
numbers.
he was keeping up with the game even through the birth.
Yeah.
So
Breathe. Damn it, the Skins lost again.
yeah.
At least he doesn't have the
something wrong
experience,
with
the play-by-play. Then, if that's the case, he just gets to see the score and know that we're not scoring and
Right.
we're giving up points. So that's
Speaking
better
of
than
the
knowing how we
play-by-play,
actually played.
Can I ask you guys a question? How on earth does a major network sideline reporter butcher the names of 2 players in one minor hit? Jennifer Hale, who was doing the sideline reporting for Fox today, called during an injury update in the second quarter, I believe it was, said Samaje Perine, I believe it was, and Perine said Samaje Perine and Ty Nsekhe. I think in the same sentence. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, the Redskins pass out pronunciation guides to the media.
Right.
We get them.
Now,
There's
let's be
absolutely
fair,
no excuse
those are
whatsoever.
Probably the two hardest names on the Redskins roster.
It's spelled out phonetically
Right.
in the media
Right.
guide, for God's sake. How do you do that when you've had all week to prepare
There's a
for
reason she's
a
on
football
the
game?
15th, or I guess it's not 15, but Fox has 8 different play-by-play teams. And
Yeah,
It's up
this
there.
game was down the
yeah,
line
this,
for
this
sure.
was
yeah.
down in the bottom 7 or 8, spots.
Still, though,
Yeah.
I mean, you're a major network TV announcer, and you can't pronounce two guys' names.
Right, but
I
they
mean,
don't
come on,
hire the
Jennifer,
sideline people to actually be good at their job. They hired them to look pretty, generally speaking.
We never saw her in a single time in the game.
Yeah.
She may have been attractive. She may not be. I don't even know who she is.
Truth be
But she
told,
can't pronounce those two men's
I'm about
names.
to say, I didn't even think twice about it because I don't even be paying attention to that type of stuff. I'm used to it. But I mean,
It's awful. I mean, I could see that, on a crappy show like ours, maybe. But I mean, because we messed up P. Ryan's name in the beginning too, until Jamal corrected us. But I mean, you work for Fox Sports, for God's sakes.
Right.
Get it right.
Understood. All right, so enough of all this, man. We've been procrastinating long enough. We know what we have to talk
Yeah.
about. So, first thing first, let's get these stats out the way. Steve, what you got for us?
All right. Kirk Cousins had statistically one of the worst games of his career today. He was 20 for 37 for only 158 yards, 4.3 yards per attempt, 3 interceptions, 3 sacks, a quarterback rating of 31.1. Capri Bibbs was our leading rusher, 12 carries, 47 yards, average 3.9 yards per carry, which when you're the Redskins is actually pretty good. Kirk Cousins had 1 carry for 12 yards with the Redskins' sole touchdown. Samaje Perine was 2 for 3 yards before he went out with his injury, which is along the lines of what Perine usually does. As a team, they were 16 for 61. Receiving-wise, Bibbs was also our leading receiver, 8 receptions on 9 targets for 53 yards. Josh Doxson had 10 targets for 4 receptions, 37 yards. Jameson Crowder, 7 targets, 3 receptions, 25 yards. Ryan Grant had 5 targets, 2 receptions, 23 yards. Vernon Davis was 2 for 20. Nels Paul was 1 reception for no yards. From the New York Giants side of the ball, Eli was 10 for 28. 132 yards, 4.7 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 2 sacks, 48.5 quarterback rating. Orleans Darkwa pretty much tore the Redskins apart today. 20 carries, 154 yards, 7.7 yards per attempt, including the 75-yard run which was the second play from scrimmage. Wayne Gallman, 15 for 89. Shane Vereen was 3 for 14. The leading pass catcher today for the Giants was Rhett Ellison, 5 for 63. Hunter Sharp was 3 for 29, and it goes down from there. So that's stats for today. And by the way, since I brought this up on Twitter, to our Twitter following, I said stay tuned to the show to find out if Tress Way passed for more yards than both Cousins and Manning combined. So let's get that out of the way,
for more
too.
yards, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, kicked.
Yeah.
I said rush. I meant kicked. Yeah, so between the two of them, Cousins and Manning, they passed for 290 yards passing.
Okay.
Would anybody care to take a stab at, without looking, at the number of yards that Tressway punted today? I'll just give you guys it was 9 punts.
9 punts. Let's say he averaged 45. That's a
I'd
tough
say
one.
he got for like 250.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
Okay.
315.
You guys are way off. He punted for 426 yards today.
You're lying.
Which is 100. No, I'm not. It's nine punts, 426 yards, 47.3 yards per punt. He had a really good punting day today, and that means he punted for 136 more yards than Manning and Cousins passed for combined.
Oh my goodness.
So that's the kind of day it was today. And if you want to get into the Giants punting, we can do that too. The Giants punter Brad Wing punted for 363 yards.
Right.
So between the two punters, they punted for almost 800 yards.
Wow.
Matter of fact, they punted for exactly 799 yards punting today. So there you go.
All right. This is going to be painful. So let's go ahead and get this out the way first, and talk about the Redskins offense, because for the life of me, I just do not understand, and just in the team as a team in general, I just do not understand how you come out playing the type of way that you've played. Like, for example, I tweeted probably in the first quarter. It may have been early. Like, I noticed it immediately. The Redskins were playing like they were cold. Like, I don't know if that makes sense to a lot of people out there. Some people told me like it made sense to them when I tweeted that. But when you play like you're cold, you play like you're stiff, you play like the ball is a 30-pound rock hard object, and it's difficult for you to either throw, hold on to, catch, etc. Any type of these things, and it rubbed off on the Redskins. It made it so obvious compared to the Giants. I don't understand why the Redskins are playing this way, knowing that they're in Washington D.C. This is a place where it gets cold in December and January, and like it just looks so awful. That's one thing. But your overall thoughts on how the offense played, just general, before we get into anything specific.
They obviously clearly look cold.
Yeah.
I can't say that they looked unprepared to me, meaning it was a coaching thing. Honestly, I mean, I hate to say this, but I thought the players played with zero energy. I mean, we'll get to Kirk. Kirk had a horrible day.
Yeah.
But in terms of the players' effort, it went south immediately right off the bat with the Darkwa touchdown and then Cousins' interception on the second play of the Redskins' first possession. And it looked like, honestly, that the players quit and didn't care. That's what it looked like to me.
I mean, I agree with you, and I'll also add in the Samaje Perine injury in there. To lose a guy who, all right, he's not your number one guy, but he was an important part of the offense, and lose him right away.
Only by default, though, Alex. Only by default.
Yeah.
Only by default. He hasn't been good all year.
I'm not heaping praise on him. My point was more, hey, we just lost another guy to an injury, and this game doesn't matter. That probably,
and then Nsekhe went out like that same series too.
And I think that might have also played into some guys' mindsets. You know, you see another guy go down, you see Ty go down, and it's why are we wasting these guys on nothing? You know.
To me, it looked like 20 guys didn't care, and then there was DJ Swearinger and Ryan Kerrigan. That's what it looked like to me.
I also feel like, and you guys have spoke on this, it wasn't just the 75-yard run that did him in, but after you give up a 75-yard touchdown, and then, as Ali said, you throw the interception. It was on third down.
They threw the interception on third.
On third down.
Third play.
And you give up a touchdown right after that too. You give up a big play, then you commit a turnover, and then you give up another touchdown. On both sides of the ball, it's like, damn, we're down 2 possessions already, and the game hasn't even started yet. Like, I mean, it technically hasn't even started yet. You're only 2 minutes in, and you're already down 2 possessions. It's like immediately it went from trying to go to 8-8, be like, damn, well, let's hurry up and get this game over with, because I'm not really interested in playing no more. It's like, if
you think the Patriots and the Steelers would have had that attitude though, winning teams go, okay, what do we do about it?
Well, 2 things. One, we can't. You're right, but we can't compare ourselves to them too. We're right. I mean, you're right to ask that question, but then again, 2, they would never be in that position in the first place to be in a meaningless game for them, because they're always in the playoffs one way or another, or fighting for playoff contention one way or another. So it wouldn't be a meaningless game for them in the sense that they don't have really anything to play for beyond the regular season. So I would assume they will always have that type of mentality where we have to get in this and we have to win. I've never seen neither one of those teams fold in any type of capacity. Well,
I mean, okay, so the closest would be the Steelers today were playing the Browns. The Steelers had playoffs locked up. What did they do? They put in all their backups. Like that's how they kind of fold on the season. That's a totally different thing, because then the backups care about winning that game for them to have game tape. We're not even in that situation, which is even more
that's what I'm talking about. I mean, the Steelers may play, Ben Roethlisberger's backup and everything, but they don't quit. Mm-hmm. Good teams never quit. And it looked like, honestly, that the Redskins today just quit and they didn't care, and it was right off the bat. It was very disappointing to see, considering all week we heard from Jay Gruden, 8-8 means something, which it would have meant something. Go ahead, Jamal.
Oh no, I was about to add on. It makes it even worse. It really does, because if you say 8-8, you go on this throughout this week and say how much of importance 8-8 is to you. And I heard this morning. I don't know what day it was this week he said it, but it was a repeat recording of what he said. He was talking about how you're never guaranteed anything if you lose the last game. Those are his words exactly. You're never guaranteed anything if you lose the last game. The most important thing for him as a head coach is to win this last game because you're never guaranteed anything following it if you lose. And for you to come out of here as a team that you're head coaching, that you're a head coach of, and they look this abysmal offensively, and then you give up over 200, I think past 250 yards rushing, if I'm not mistaken, or close to 250, and 28 points? I drowned out after.
It was 18 points and 260 yards.
Oh, it seemed
rushing.
like 28 points. So I zoned out after I realized I wasn't
goal
winning.
Line. It could have easily.
Yeah,
been
it could have been 25 points at least.
I zoned out after I realized I wasn't about to win any money this week. So they kind of agitated me. So, but the point is, sorry about the ramble, but the fact that they know how much of importance it means to them. Jay Gruden knows that. He stated it, and he also stated what it means to him as a head coach. For you to finish this game at 500 with 8 wins, and you come out looking like this. And as a play caller, he did not have his best game, and I take a huge issue with that. Just overall, and it was very frustrating.
Can we talk about, since this is supposed to be the offensive segment, I think we need to address Kirk Cousins' play today. Yeah. This was the worst I've seen Cousins look in several years. I know Alex, you told us before the show there was one game that he was worse on.
I went back through every game, and I just looked at quarterback rating. I didn't want to take my time looking at everything, but in terms of his quarterback rating, he had a 31.14 rating today. You have to go back to 2013 to find he had 2 games in that year that were as bad. On the 29th of December, ironically, he had a 31.8 rating, and then on October 27th, he had a 31.0 rating. So his second worst game by 0.1 points.
Okay, by a quarterback rating at least, yeah.
That's like missing a yard.
He had several misreads today. Yeah. He had several passes that floated on him high. He missed in every way.
Low.
Kirk Cousins
behind the guy. He had several in front of the guy.
Several.
He
just
was about
awful.
As accurate as hitting a broadside of a barn with a shotgun. You know.
Yeah, he looked awful today. I don't think, before anybody gets some big conspiracy theories out there, I don't think this had anything to do with Kirk Cousins intentionally looking bad because he wants to be a free agent, blah, blah, blah.
No.
I know, exactly. Yeah, it will look really bad. The Giants just have his number. He doesn't ever seem to play well against the Giants. And I put that more on Kirk than the Giants. I don't know if they're in his head at this point or what, but it was a terrible performance in every way by Kirk Cousins. And this guy clearly is not on the same page with Josh Doxson. He hasn't been all year. Granted, Josh never gets separation, basically ever. But particularly that deep 9 route, down the sidelines, it was dramatically underthrown. If he had led the ball a little bit, I think Doxson might have been able to run away from that DB.
Doxson had separation on that route. He actually did, and then Kirk,
a little bit, yeah, and then the ball was underthrown.
Right. When the ball was, 5 yards behind where it should have been, Doxson basically had to stop at one point. The corner caught up with him. But
Doxson ran the dig route there. I think it was in the third quarter, and it was a bad route that he ran, which caused the DB to be able to make the pass defense on the ball. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm unimpressed with Doxson or if I think he finished his first year playing or what the deal is. But those two, yeah.
Oh no, I was going to let you go ahead and finish. I just got a comment to add.
Okay, well. Okay. Anyway, I don't know what the deal is with Doxson. I mean, we're obviously going to see another year of him because he's in the third year of his contract. It's fully guaranteed. So before anybody dreams of Doxson going anywhere, that isn't going to happen. I just don't know. It's hard for NFL wide receivers to adjust in their first year playing. We know that. So it's not time to write him off necessarily. We really need to see him play another year, but. I don't think this was – he clearly has athleticism, but he's just not a very good receiver overall right now. That's my opinion.
So here's the deal. I was just going to add on to the fact that how you feel about Doxson, you're not wrong, but here's the issue with people that's listening right now when it comes to Doxson. When it comes to Doxson, you got to understand that you can be not very impressed by him while also saying that he does have potential to do better because of the things that you've seen him doing on the field. Like there's some times where you see this rare athletic ability that you haven't seen from any other Redskin receiver in some time. But at the same time, you've also seen him struggle to create separation and struggle to catch the ball in simple situations where all you have to do is use your hands instead of your body. And you wonder, like, is he ever going to get any better in these type of situations? Like you cannot be impressed, but also at the same time see why people feel the way they feel. So the point is, I'm saying overall he gives mixed reviews, and there's nothing wrong with that right now because this is his first year on the field as a full season, not a full time, but he played a full 16 games. This is just something that you're going to get from a guy who has been so inconsistent all year, and that's really the bottom line. He's just been inconsistent. So all these people who's in favor or against Josh Doctson, you're entitled to your opinion, but it shouldn't even have reached that point right now. You got to understand that he has some more growing to do and he needs some more experience. It is what it is, but he hasn't been that impressive this year, and it's more so for the fact that he's been so too inconsistent to say anything otherwise.
Well, and I'll go back to something I said early on in the year when Terrell Pryor was still playing. Kurt spent his entire offseason trying to work with Pryor and get in rhythm with him and didn't really put in as much time with Doctson. I think, ideally, if you put in more time between whoever the quarterback of the future is, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a lot, you put that time in with that quarterback and Doctson, those 50-50 balls that are short and, aren't quite on target for him, those will be better. And I think that's what needs to improve the most. Doctson does need to improve his separation. I don't know if he can do it going deep. I think if you want to look at where he'll improve his separation, it'll be on those slant routes and things like that where he's still not getting it.
And Alex, there's no doubt that Doctson needs to get on the same page with Cousins, and that will improve, with time. But Josh Doctson is not a very good route runner.
No.
Okay,
he's by no means
a lot of these balls that are the 50-50 balls, it's because of Josh. It doesn't have to be a 50-50 ball. It just is because he's not a very good route runner. I don't think his hands are very good. I agree with everything Jamal was saying. He's got these flaws. I'm willing to overlook it for another year because we all know how long it takes wide receivers to adjust. But if we get to the end of next year and this hasn't improved, because look, he's a first-round draft pick,
right.
And when you spend a first-round draft pick on a receiver, you're looking for a guy who can become a number one receiver. And I'm not always in love with the term number one receiver because it's an undefined, subjective thing.
I've always said
but you're looking
anything over 1,000 yards a season is a number one guy,
Well, it's a guy who can run the full route tree
Sure.
and has good hands and can make the play whenever the team needs it. And Josh isn't anywhere close to that right now. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, for another year at a minimum. Particularly if we have another quarterback next year.
And I think I don't know if he'll ever be more than a role player kind of receiver for us. If we can at least get him into that point where, hey, maybe we, for 5 or 6 years, he's our go-to red zone target. I'll be happy with that at this point. I'm giving up on him being a 1,300 yard,
Well, I think it's too early for you to give up on it. I do, because it's just these receivers. Yes, he didn't show his full potential, but the dude was a stud at TCU.
Yeah, he was,
which is a big-time football program. It is going to take some time, and if we have a new quarterback next year, which obviously is an open question right now, it may take some time to get on the front, the same page with that quarterback. So, there's going to be an adjustment period, But if you want to give him we're going to do a season in review show either next week or some other time.
Right.
But if you're talking about grades on the season for Josh Doctson, to me, he's like a C- because he showed some potential, but he's just not there.
Hold on, one second though, because what we did do just now, we kind of strayed away from Kirk Cousins. And there's nothing wrong with that because we were talking about Josh, another important piece of this offense and a piece of the future, especially for at least the remaining the next 2 years for sure. But we briefly touched on Kirk Cousins. I felt like, and
we should get back to Kirk. That's fair.
Yeah, Steve, you had your opinion. You said that he played one of his worst games, and I agree as well. He did play one of his worst games, and I think that's something that the type of stain that you leave in. Off a game like this as possibly your final game as a Redskin just defines the type of career he had in the NFC East. Honestly, outside of the Eagles game, outside of the Eagles games where he's had his best performances within the division, he's only won 4 games against the Giants and Cowboys combined, and he only won 1 time against the Cowboys. If this is his last game as a Redskin, so the type of division numbers just speaks for itself first and foremost.
I mean, I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a better quarterback than I gave him credit for in the first 2 years of his NFL career. And I was wrong in my views on him years ago, but I think it's objectively true to say that Kirk Cousins has not come through when things get tough. In the big games that really matter, he has consistently failed over and over and over again. And I don't think anybody can deny that if you just look at the results of some of these games last year against the Giants. It was a player go home game, and he looked terrible. The playoff game against the Packers. Yes, he was up against Aaron Rodgers and blah blah blah. He looked bad that game, right. And that is against the Cowboys. He looked bad. This year, a couple weeks or a few weeks ago. So I think it's fair to say that Cousins, for all he's put up amazing numbers. I mean, his quarterback rating is unbelievable. The number of yards he's passed for is unbelievable. But the man has failed much more often than not, when the Redskins really needed him.
I mean, I think, there's a lot of fair criticism of him. I'm at a point where I see both sides of this argument about what to do with him long term. I understand the money questions. I understand that he's never going to be Tom Brady. He's a very smart quarterback. He's not going to be an elite arm, and so he won't ever perform at that level. I think if you put his brain inside the body of one of these freak athletic quarterbacks, you'd have an unstoppable machine. But
we've said that for years. We always used to say that if we could combine Robert Griffin, Kirk Cousins, and Colt McCoy, we'd have the best, greatest quarterback ever.
Right, exactly. But we're never going to find that. I don't think. I just don't think those kind of guys exist in the NFL.
Oh, go ahead. Excuse me.
This game is a tough one, and here's what frustrates me, and this is about the offense at large, too. Kirk was having a terrible game, but we literally had nothing else we could go to in terms of moving the ball. And I think...
You sure?
Hmm?
I can name one thing.
Okay.
Don't say the screen.
No. Capri Bibbs looked pretty good today.
Yeah, but
in the quality of his runs, the reads that he made, his effort, his athleticism, Capri looked pretty good, and he was averaging over 4 yards a carry right up until the last.
How many times did we run him?
Drive or two.
I think 12
times.
He
didn't get too many carries. He only had 12 carries, but he looked pretty good today. I wonder if, putting aside Chris Thompson for a minute, I wonder if Capri, at a minimum, isn't our most dynamic running back, and the running back with maybe the highest ceiling if he continues to develop.
The issue I have, I don't have a huge problem. I don't have a problem with Bibbs himself. The issue that I do have is when you analyze the running back situation, you're not cutting Samaje. No. You're not cutting Chris Thompson. You may think about, not thinking about you may be thinking about getting rid of Rob Kelly or may keep him. But at the end, you're not going to use 4 running backs. And I think that's the issue that Bibbs will be facing. He may find a home in terms of staying on the roster or the practice squad.
Yeah.
Or maybe just in the preseason, having a home here and finding a better opportunity somewhere else after the preseason. But that's the issue that you fall into.
Here's, I think, the larger issue to me, and it's not just about Capri Bibbs, Chris Thompson. It's about what actually works with this system. And as much as they seem to want to draft a 220 or 230-pound power back, they don't work for Jay. What works for what Jay does is the Chris Thompson and the Capri Bibbs. It's speed guys who can catch screens and get about, they get about 50% of their yards in the passing game as well as the running game. That's what works best.
Alex, I hear you, Alex. But I would argue that Jay Gruden has never had a big running back that's worth a tinker's damn, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think if you give him an elite level, a true elite level power back, like a Leonard Fournette, an Ezekiel Elliott, maybe a Saquon Barkley type guy, I think Jay is smart enough to know. I think he's proven that he's smart enough to know how to adjust to his players to a certain extent.
Right.
And I think if you had a running back like that, I think you would be amazed at how Jay would end up using him.
Well,
And I pointed out, that, the second or third run of the game, you've got P. Ryan on the stretch play to the right. And I said, okay, why are we using P. Ryan like that? A couple people tweeted back at me that, that's been Samaje's most successful run, and
his
okay,
most
fine,
successful
but
run
that's
has
not
been
very.
zone inside. I mean, if you
Well,
really go back.
I
and
mean,
look, but yeah,
my point is, he's not very good at that. He's not very good at any of it, and. To Jamal's point about the numbers thing with Capri, you're right, and it's going to get worse if the Redskins draft a running back. Which, if I was the Redskins, I would draft a running back as high as possible.
yeah, but
I think Capri at a minimum has earned the right to compete for a shot, and I think he has the ability to outplay some of these
I
guys.
think he does too. I'm not going to say, because here's the guy I'm least sold on is Rob Kelly at this point. He did not have a good showing before he got hurt.
I think he's a better running back than Samaje.
But well, here's the thing though. And I can't even tell at this point when it comes to Samaje and Rob. I honestly can't even tell. But the thing is, with these younger guys, and the same thing, I caught myself doing it with Anthony Lanier. I spoke too soon. I felt after this game, I felt like I spoke too soon because I definitely gave Anthony Lanier a lot of credit for how he's played the last 3 games prior to this one. But this one, he wasn't really a factor inside in the interior, as either a run defender or a pass rusher against a offensive line who wasn't really impressive at all before the game or even during it. They weren't that impressive. But my point is, when I'm talking about these younger players, is the fact that we kind of oversell them because of the small sample size that we do have. And it's the same thing with Josh Doctson. A lot of people point to the lack of targets that he's had and emphasizing the plays that he has made as a receiver. And as a receiver, you're paid to make plays. So when you look at Capri Bibbs, you look at Anthony Lanier, you look at Josh Doctson, and I'm not hating. This isn't a hate for any type of any of these players. I'm just warning people. You don't want to overemphasize the small sample size that we do have of these guys because of the fact that they're playing okay in the moment. Like, they've shown they played well, but just, wait it out a little bit.
It's a very, very good point. I totally agree with you. Your Anthony Lanier example is exactly right. Yes, he's had a couple high visibility games. Let's say it like that. He batted 3 balls last week.
Yeah,
he blocked
down
because
he's so
today.
tall.
I mean, that was him.
Yeah, he
did.
But
that's worth something.
But as a guy like as a guy like Anthony Lanier, a stud, elite level.
No, he's probably a decent
defensive lineman. No.
Option.
And in terms of Josh Doctson, the man has had 23 targets in the past 2 games.
Right.
Okay, he's had 23 targets, and I can't remember off the top of my head how many balls he caught last week, but it was something like 2. Yeah.
Week. Granted, people tend to forget Denver's secondary is still really good, even though their team is terrible.
Okay, but overall, so he's been 6 for 23 over the past 2 weeks.
Good.
That's terrible. It's not just not good; it's terrible.
Well, it's not as bad as 0 for 23, but that's not saying much.
Yeah.
Okay, but what quality starting receiver has a catch rate of what is that, about 30%, roughly? Zero.
Maybe those guys who are like deep ball specialists will have that over a year, but yeah.
Well, look. Let's put it this way: there's a very capable receiver in the Redskins stable that was being overanalyzed in the offseason. His first name, I can't think of one off the top of his head, but his first name's Ryan.
Terrell Pryor?
No, his first name's Ryan. Last name Grant. I'm not sure if you guys heard of him.
I was going to literally go through every single receiver.
This is the guy that the Grant family is paying Jamal Forrest under the table to keep talking about him on the show.
I just want you guys to know that his target and catch percentage was being overanalyzed by this one person on this show. I can't think of his name. I'm not sure. But, his catch percentage was being overanalyzed by that person. So just want you guys to know that it does make a difference in terms of, there is years where that'll happen. I wouldn't necessarily look to that as the point, the end-all, be-all, because, that will change and that can change with, proper chemistry and if the player is able to get better on his end as well. So I'm just saying, man, Josh Doctson, he could be a productive receiver, but I wouldn't point to the catch percentage.
Get back to what I was trying to get to earlier, it's not just that the Redskins, the lack of an effective running game, even in with Capri Bibbs or whoever it's going to be. It's that I feel like great teams, they figure out 3-4 different ways to beat an offense or beat a defense, and if they know if one's not working, they can go to another. We really don't barely even have one way of beating teams this year. And it's partly the injuries. It's that we don't have a number one receiver. We don't
this team had a lack of playmakers before all the injuries this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing that drives me nuts. They need a playmaker, not just at running back. They need a playmaker at wide receiver so badly.
We had one. He's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now,
and doing terrible down there too. Not that that has anything to do.
He did. By the way,
here, but.
No, I mean, and Dejax just got in trouble with a wrecked car and marijuana in the car
and was it bullets?
Yeah, it was apparently his friend was driving and he wasn't in the car, but I want to get back to Jamal's statement because Jamal's talking about me when he's, let's just say that up front.
Talking about me?
No, he's talking about me. I've never said Grant is terrible.
I said Grant was terrible.
I think you might have. I think Grant is an average receiver. What I've said about his hands is I think they're overrated in the sense that I think Jay Gruden seems to have a lot of faith in his hands, but he does drop balls. This man is not Jerry Rice.
He dropped 3
and he's not
today.
Art Monk. Well, I mean, one of those wasn't his fault. I mean, he didn't drop 3 balls today. The one the most visible one was a terrible, horrible pass from Kirk Cousins. That was on Cousins. Yeah. His hands.
He did drop one though, Alex. I remember one. I remember the one you're talking about. Closer to
he did drop one
or something like that. I can't remember.
He dropped one on the
I didn't count 3.
I mean, he
but
was also the target on at least one of the interceptions. I can't remember which. But that's not.
I mean, if you give anybody enough playing time, they're going to be semi-productive. Grant is okay. He's an average receiver. I have no problem with Ryan Grant. I don't think he's got great hands necessarily. They're decent. They're okay. He works hard. Nice guy. If they bring him back, I'm not going to cry about it. He's a productive guy, but he's never going to be a star of this.
Worth something.
Yeah. He's never going to be a star of the Redskins receiver score.
Yeah, he definitely earned a good little paycheck for like a fourth string or third string receiver. So I agree that he's earned the right to be back after this season. Doesn't necessarily mean anything in terms of the quality, like his production being up, or do we expect him to be a 2 or 1 receiver? Obviously, that's not going to happen.
Let's be honest. What we're seeing out of him this year, which is I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's around 400 yards on the year. This is probably where you can expect him at most seasons. I don't ever see him being much more than this. But that's fine if he's the fourth guy, on the team.
Yeah, I'm fine with Ryan Grant as the fourth receiver.
Right.
All right,
sure.
So Steve, I'm sure I didn't mean to cut you off too soon, but I'm sure you you had something to say before we move on to the defense. I'm sure you had something to say about the offensive line. Talking about
that. Cousins got hit a lot today, and he had the 3 sacks. Right. But before anybody freaks out over it, and I saw some people complaining about Tyler Catalina. I mean, understand that we're talking about an undrafted free agent backup guard who was forced into a left tackle role, who was going against an elite edge rusher.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you guys think was going to happen, but he was going to get dominated. And the Redskins, on a lot of those plays, did not have a tight end on his side to help him. They didn't have a tight end to help him every time. Granted, yes, he looked bad. Morgan Moses gave up a sack.
Sheriff gave up one, didn't he?
Also, Sheriff gave up one on that inside rush. So no, Catalina did not look good, but I can't hardly blame him considering the circumstances.
It's not Tyler Catalina's fault that he's Tyler Catalina.
It's not his fault that he's a guard playing left
And
tackle
I think he's
against
a guard center
Jason
too.
Pierre-Paul.
That's his, he's an interior guy.
He's definitely an interior guy, and he's going against JPP and Olivier Vernon.
Right.
That was bound to happen.
Right. And
so
they didn't give him much help, I noticed.
No, they didn't. That's what I
really
said.
see
They
many
didn't
tight
give him a
ends
lot of
on
help at
there.
all. No. I mean, they had Vernon Davis lined up there a couple times. Well, Vernon Davis can't block anything. Vernon Davis can't block me.
Jeremy Sprinkle's the only guy who can block from the end position, or the tight
And
end.
he never sees the field.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get on the field. So that's all I wanted to say about that. So go ahead, Jamal.
All right. Yeah. So about this defense, though, I think I remember you saying earlier. I can't remember actually who was specifically, either Alex or Steve. But the two people that seemed to care was Kerrigan and Swearinger.
Yeah, that was me.
So it's kind of it kind of goes to show how they felt today. It was just a weird game. We know why. A couple plays in, and it was just downhill after that. They made a few stops. They forced 8 punts. But for the most part, they should have never gave up these explosive plays to an offense who just was not that good. And so that's just my thoughts on the defense overall.
Well, think about this. All the scoring basically came off of weird turnovers or a big special teams play for us. I mean, it was basically just one big run was all the Giants did all day.
Well, they had 260 yards rushing. It wasn't just that one play. How can you let one of the worst rushing teams in the league run for 260 yards? Take away the Darkwa 75-yard run in the second on the second play of the game, and you're still talking about, what is that? That's 165 yards rushing.
More, I think.
Because it was 75 yards. No, yeah, I did that wrong. Yeah, 185. Yeah, 185 yards. I mean, you're still talking about a good rushing day. And, the Giants' rushing attack looked varied. They had a bunch of different guys running the ball today. Wayne Gallman had too much speed, and you have to think that some of that success that Gallman had on the edge would have been negated if Zach Brown had been out there, but we had Zach Vigil instead.
Vigil and
I realized that.
Who was the other guy that was in there?
Vigil and
Spate. Spate looked hurt, by the way. I noticed him a bunch of times coming up just holding one arm, and he was still playing because we don't have anyone else. But
I just mean, all the same, how does this happen? How does this happen? How do you let that happen?
Fourth stringers playing starting roles, and
they just didn't look motivated. The same thing can apply to me as the offense. They didn't look motivated. They didn't look like they cared. They came out and looked like they were in vacation mode already, and were excited about the possibility of watching the good teams play next Sunday.
I think it's that, and I think that you had a lot of guys playing in this football game that know they're not going to be back next year.
Those are the guys that need to care the most.
Well, but they're not going to get contracts, I don't think. I mean, do you think...
you don't know that.
Do you think Zach Vigil will come back?
He might play for somebody. If he knows he's not going to be here, he needs to put good game tape out there.
I say, the thing is, he's... And before this game started, a lot of people were saying we need to make a move to keep Zach Vigil here for the future as a reserve man. After this, nothing much has changed, but it is a fact that these guys have played well enough where even if they don't stay here, they will have a home. A few people, and I'm including Zach Vigil into this, they will have a home somewhere else in terms of competing for a backup role elsewhere. They've played that well. But then again, they played well against teams that aren't really that good offensively. And you played a veteran quarterback in Eli Manning compared to Osweiler and the Arizona quarterback,
Bortles.
Blaine Gabbert.
Was it Gabbert?
Blaine Gabbert.
Sorry, yeah.
Gabbert. Blaine
Gabbert.
Gabbert.
Yeah, Blaine
You
Gabbert.
played two terrible quarterbacks compared to Eli Manning, who was dicing you guys up offensively. So it just goes to show where they are when playing a more competent quarterback.
It was just a really negative day overall. I mean, both people in the stands were cheering. There could have been more than a few thousand people in the stands. I'm just kidding.
One guy tweeted out that the Giants claimed there were 80,000 people in the stands, and
that was J.P. Finley.
Yeah, J.P. Finley
and he said there could have been more than 5,000. But my point is, the Giants gave out effort.
Right.
They got their crowd into it. They looked like they wanted to win. The Spagnuolo said all week he wasn't going to put up with quitting, and he didn't. Jay's not going anywhere, but Jay let his team quit, and that includes the defense. It's just mind-boggling to me how you let a team like the New York Giants rush for 260 yards in a game where you claim that it mattered to you. It's incredible to me that you guys had that much quit in you, even despite the injuries.
Well, here's the one.
I can stand getting beat, but I just don't like the lack of effort.
Yeah, here's the one thing that I will say after because you had this one thing that popped up in my head as you were speaking. So think about this, and I don't know exactly how you guys feel, but I don't have a problem with bringing Jay Gruden back. I don't think he's a big issue per se. But the bigger issue is a year from now, 12/31/2018. If we're in the same boat that we were this year, and we had not necessarily the same roller coaster, but we had the same type of thought of how this team played, in terms of their mentality, how they looked on the field. Some things that reflect back to the head coach, and they had some games where they didn't show up completely. Just if that was the situation, how big of a time, how much waste of time do you think it would have been for you to say that? For me personally, I back Jay Gruden. I don't think he's a huge issue, but to find out a year from now you're still dealing with the same issues, you would have realized that you've wasted so much time thinking that he wasn't a big part of the problem, and then you realize that he is. Like it's. I just think it's something worth noting because a lot of people don't think that he's a big issue, and I'm one of them. But at the same time, if he turns out to be a huge part of the issue, you would have realized how much time you've wasted hanging on to Jay Gruden as an organization and people as a fan base, where you could have figured out, you could have moved on a long time ago.
Well,
I mean, go ahead.
I mean, here's the thing: who are you going to move on to? Unless you have a clear plan of what you want to do, I don't think you ever move on from a coach. There's certain things that have to happen for it to be the right time to fire a coach. You have to lose the locker room, for example, is always my big one. But let's just say that Sean McVay were still here. If they were to say this time next year, we have this kid who's a lot more talented, and we think he could be a great coach. Okay, I can see making the move. It'd be unconventional, but I could understand it. We don't have anybody right now who it makes sense to go to, and I don't think that the Redskins have done any kind of work to try and identify a great coach to bring in.
Well, I don't think they should have. I mean, this injury situation has been utterly ridiculous this year. I mean, he really does kind of get it past where I kind of fault Jay Gruden as a play caller, and we're getting away from defense a little bit, I realize that, but I think his play calling is too conservative in many spots, and I don't think his clock management skills, especially at the end of the first half, has ever been very good. It wasn't today, certainly. He bungled. I thought he bungled the end of the first half today. But he runs entirely too many passes to the flats. This typical West Coast stuff. How many third downs have we seen over the course of Jay's career where it's 3rd and 10 or more, and he's going to throw a pass to the flats and just hope for yak?
Yeah, I mean,
at some point you got to throw to the sticks, and he just almost never does that. And I fault him for that. I fault him for his clock management.
I mean, we don't necessarily.
Some of that's on Jay.
My point is, you don't necessarily know that that's the first read.
A lot of times it is, though. A lot of times you can tell that it is the first read, and I do place some blame. Yes, part of that's Kirk, because Kirk is naturally a conservative guy, and that's part of the reason why his quarterback rating's so high. Because Kirk doesn't like to take a lot of chances. I realize that.
We all know that. That's
but
part of what.
Yeah, I mean, but But part of that is on Jay. He's an inventive play caller, but I don't think he's an aggressive enough play caller in many circumstances. And I place some blame on him for that. I mean, to answer Jamal's question, if you fast forward a year and we've seen another year kind of like this, only we haven't had the injury problems, yeah, he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think this kind of year, if we were healthy, would be a bad year.
Yeah, it was more so me saying that because of the fact that I am a fan of Jay Gruden, and I do want him to succeed. And I also think that this year was hindered, because of the injury factor. I was just saying that if you go a year from now and you realize that some of the issues that he does have is a bigger reason than you initially thought of why this team cannot be successful, you would have realized how much time you've wasted backing Jay Gruden when you could have moved on. Now, and obviously, I don't think that, and I agree with your points, Alex, that you do have to have a plan in place. And if they did make that move, I would have believed that they had some people they could have went after. And there's always assistant coaches that you're not thinking of, you or I or any fan that they aren't thinking of. That's until the rumors or reports start to surface, and then you start making your conclusion that, okay, this guy isn't that bad, or this guy is actually a person that you're looking forward to bringing on based on his resume and reputation in the NFL, then is when you start realizing that they actually did have a plan all along. So that is a factor that you would consider if they did make the move. If they didn't, then we're looking at, and we talked about this last week, or Wednesday, excuse me, then you're looking at a situation where they thought Jim Foster was going to come along and they just scratched everything. They really didn't have a plan.
You know what? I mean, given Dan Snyder's history as having a man with little patience about things, I think the fact that Jay is kind of getting a pass this year is a good thing.
It is.
Because I think it shows that Dan Snyder's matured a little bit. Because 10 years ago, if this had happened, there's no doubt that Jay would already be gone. He'd be being fired right at this moment. Jay would be being fired right at this moment as we were recording this if this kind of thing had happened last year, because Dan has a history of that, and he has fired coaches on game day after the last game. And I think the fact that he's getting a pass at this we'll see what happens over the course of a year. I think it is a sign that the owner has matured a little bit.
Just on one part of what you're saying, Jamal, about if next year we're still in this 7-9 to 9-7 range and not much has changed, we miss the playoffs. Even if that means, okay, we're going to move on from Jay, it doesn't mean we wasted a bunch of time. We haven't had this much success in 25 years, being average. If you can tell me, all right.
Average is an improvement. Huh? Average is an improvement, people.
Somebody pointed this out. The last time the Redskins went 3 years without having a 10-loss season, you have to go back to Gibbs 1.0. It's been that long since we've had even that much success. So if you're telling me next year we're around 8-8, we fire Gruden, I'll say, all right, great. We had 4 years of actual average stability. That means we actually have a team that you can build off of after 4 years, even if it's with a different head coach.
Yeah.
Because when Gruden came in, he had nothing. When Shanahan came in 4 years earlier, he had nothing. When Joe Gibbs came in, he had nothing. We've been going through this cycle where every 4 years or so, we gut the team, and you can't build a team if you gut it every 4 years. You actually have to say, all right, stay the course, build off of what you have, get rid of the stuff that's not working. And then you do that
Jeff Fisher's made a career out of that.
6 years, and then eventually you'll get to being like a 10 to 12 win team.
Jeff Fisher's made a career out of doing that with teams.
And look what happened. When they finally got rid of him and got a different head coach, the team he built was actually a decent roster you could win with.
And the thing is, it's not necessarily me saying, the 7-9, et cetera, all these type of things. It's the fact that, all right, for example, Jeff Fisher I don't think he got fired because he was 7-9 and 8-8. It was more so the fact that he had one of the most generic offenses. Well, yes, it is a part, but he had one of the most generic offenses in the NFL. When you were sitting on a gold mine essentially of a team, and you had that generic of an offense. It was so basic. Your defense it wasn't to the capabilities of what it could be. But at the same time, when you look at this team, the Redskins, and you realize that, and I'm saying this more so, it's not about the 7-9. It's the capabilities of the head coach per se, not just the record. But when you look at certain games and Jay Gruden, when you say this was bad clock management, this was a poor decision in a critical situation, a critical moment. When you realize that those moments carried over to another season where injuries didn't really play a factor, if for the sake of next year, if you brought your quarterback on a 1-year deal, or just for the sake of this conversation, if you brought your quarterback on a 1-year deal and you're dealing with the same situation that you were dealing with a year ago, like
but
there was
that
no.
would be on Gruden. That would be on the front office. Gruden's
No, I'm not.
said
I'm
he
not
wants
talking. I'm not
Kirk here long term.
I'm not talking about the fact that it was his decision or not. I'm just saying that he was still back on the roster, and you're having virtually the same leadership on the offense is what I'm saying, and you still make bad decisions in terms of play calling, clock management, decision making is what I'm referring to. It just reflects on the coach is what I'm saying, not necessarily that Kirk got brought back. That was just the fact that he was back on another 1-year deal. So that's all I was saying. Like, it just reflects on the fact that Jay Gruden is probably, if this was to happen, and we still ended up 7 and 8 wins, just shows that is his ceiling, and you wasted time trying to figure out if he can do more, I feel.
Well, I don't think it's a waste of time to figure that out with a coach. I think if you're wasting time on a coach who his ceiling is like Jim Zorn's, where it's like 3 to 4 wins, which is what Jim Zorn probably was, that's a waste of time. To me, coaching, it's the most important part of the team, and at the same time, it's something that you can get away with an average coach for a long time, as long as he keeps that locker room together. And there's a lot of value to that because, like I said, it's all about the team building aspect to me. And, I think Gruden is the kind of guy who, whenever he does leave, he will leave behind a good team for the next coach. He's not building to win a Super Bowl and get out, Like a lot of the coaches we have, it feels like they just come here, they want to win a Super Bowl and prove everyone they still can do it, and then they want to get out. And so when they can't, that's why the team's left with like a bunch of 40-year-olds who can't play anymore. So
I agree. I don't necessarily think it's what I should say, because I do realize me saying a waste of time is a negative thing. It's not necessarily a waste of time, but more so, you like what were okay. You know what? I'll just leave it at that. Waste of time.
Can I get back to defense
Sure.
real fast
Let's get
before
back
we
to
stray
defense.
too far?
Sure, yeah, I'm about to say we had enough about Jay Gruden anyway.
Yeah, we had enough of it. I was very unimpressed with the Redskins' zone defense today. The Giants had at least 7 or 8 drops.
Oh yeah, at least.
Today. But Eli was able, and the Giants receivers and running backs in particular were able to find soft spots in the zone time and time again. And the Redskins did a lot of this, today, where we're disguising zone coverage with man, and they do that a lot. But in particular, the Giants really could have, if they hadn't had so many drops, they really would have picked the Redskins apart. Mm-hmm. In this underneath zone, the running backs were open a lot in the flats.
The Giants ran
and
like
in the shallow middle
too against coverage.
Yeah, they did. They ran a million pick plays, like obvious pick plays that probably should have been a penalty, but they aren't, and you just kind of deal with that. But I don't think, despite the fact that Eli only had, 158 yards passing today.
I mean, in that
was
kind
that
of
the
weather,
no, 132
you're not
yards?
have big passing games, I feel like. So.
Yeah, it was 132 yards passing. It nonetheless was not the best day for the Redskins secondary. I didn't think. I thought they got a little lucky.
They kind of did. I feel like the Giants kind of exploited a few mismatches, especially against Fuller. Fuller didn't have a great game early on. He kind of evened out, at least in the second half.
Well, when you also realize that the Giants have like 5 wide receivers on IR.
Yeah.
They have utterly. They're in this. If there are 2 teams in the NFL that the injury situation is as bad as the Redskins, one of them's the Giants, and probably the Texans are next.
Yeah, Texans.
But those 3 teams,
awful.
the Giants, Redskins, and Texans are the 3 that have the worst injury situations, and the Giants in particular have lost all of their playmakers, every single one of them basically. And despite that, again, I thought the Redskins secondary was vulnerable. They just got a little lucky that the Giants had so many drop passes. Otherwise, it could have been a different story.
Yeah, it's not much to really add on to that because, I mean, it's even though you're playing against a team, a bunch of receivers and tight ends that you really don't know who they are. You got Sterling Shepard out, Evan Ingram out. It doesn't matter if when you face a quarterback like Eli Manning, even though he hasn't been accurate and he hasn't made the best decisions when the ball is in play, he is still a good pre-snap quarterback, he can evaluate, what a defense looks like and what they're playing based off. And on top of that, the no huddle is what kills the Redskins often, regardless of who plays them. Aaron Rodgers did it against us. Eli Manning has done it a few occasions.
Even worse teams do it to us and beat us.
Yeah, so and
it looked like the Redskins were just utterly.
So it's the fact that when you're not prepared for these type of things and you look unprepared. They ran a no huddle on the first play. On the second play of the game, and they took that for 75. And they took their time. Like, it's not necessarily hurry up. They just ran no huddle, and they're trying to keep you in a certain defense, a certain look where you're not going to be able to adjust to what they're going to run because they have multiple different ways to exploit your base formation, and that's just what killed the Redskins for the most part. And it's pretty sad because the Giants really could have did anything they wanted with Eli at the helm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out on the Darkwa run that there were 2 missed tackles on that play.
It was. And at the line of scrimmage.
Being the worst. Yeah, at the line of scrimmage, Spate being the worst. They looked just, for some odd reason, they looked unprepared for the up-tempo offense.
Yeah, they looked unprepared
and you guys are
very weird.
Yeah, they have. But in particular, an offense that has been as unsuccessful as the Giants has all year, and we talked about that in the game preview, it's a little surprising that the Redskins defense just looked unprepared for it. Or at least incapable of reacting to it, shall I say.
Yeah, it was poor. It's like I said, it's really nothing else to add on to it. They just didn't have it's just something it's very often when it comes to the Redskins and no huddle and learning how to defend it. You can face it. You can have a solid defense in the likes of Seattle and who else can I think of off the top of my head? New England doesn't really struggle with it either, but Seattle and New England, they're prepared for these type of things because they have smart minds and they have in all levels of the football field.
Right.
DJ Swearinger.
They have higher end talent on all levels of the football field generally.
Yeah.
And coaching you're talking about the JV team versus the varsity team, and you're comparing us to the Patriots.
and that's probably not a fair comparison, but it just also goes to show, like, when you have that type of level of intelligence at the safety position, the linebacker position, and defensive line, Michael Bennett, Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas, and Cam Chancellor, and then when you have McCourty, you had the middle linebacker Hightower. Defensive line, I'm not sure about the New England Patriots. I'm not really sure their defensive line per se. But the point is, you have these type of people at each level of the field. Each level of the defense, and that's very important. You're able to see things better. You're able to react to things better. And for the Redskins, it just goes to show how far they are in terms of being prepared on all levels of the football field. Or defensively, excuse me.
Here's the thing. I think this does go to the depth question that we touched on early on. Do you think that we would have given up 260 yards if it had been Allen in there, Zach Brown in there, all those other starters that we kind of lost, Will Compton or Mason Foster? I feel like...
Well, of course they would have been better. Of course it would have been better.
I'm just saying, but we kind of knew from last year that when this defense was down about, or not down, but the defense had a big hole up the middle, and we tried to kind of fix that with a couple roster moves, but oddly enough, those are a lot of the guys who got hurt. We were weak up the center, and we tried to improve there, and we still didn't do enough. So...
we've got 13 starters on IR,
Right. So, to me... Some of it comes down to that. Like, I think if you put the top-end talent back on this roster, we're okay on defense. Not good, at least okay. So, I think that'll be something we'll see next year, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. We always know as a fan base what to get in terms of off-season needs, but, the Redskins always have different plans.
That'll be fun. But this is going to be a fun off-season to figure out what we need.
Right.
There will be no lack of show topics.
Yeah. Right. So with that being said, man, let's go ahead because we're pushing an hour now. Let's go ahead and get to these game balls. I can make mine. I'll go first because mine is actually pretty simple. I have a game ball.
Go ahead.
For this team, and I'm gonna go Trustway. He had a hell of a game. So I'm gonna force you guys to be more specific and more creative. Because this is
stole my thunder, man.
This is going to be a creative choice from you guys. So I go Trustway for the game ball. There is no offense or defense. It's just strictly special teams. And if I had to give a guy who stunk it up,
the stinky
Kirk
ball?
Cousins and Dustin Hopkins.
The deflated ball.
But yeah, man, it's Trustway for the game ball.
Oh, dude, that was literally what was in my head. I was gonna give Tressway a game ball, and that was it. But
that's why I went first.
I gave him one.
All right, well,
what was the other one? Was it the San Diego game? Maybe.
We really need to start tracking these game balls.
Yeah, I tried to. It's boring.
Okay. Well, out of a lack, since Jamal stole my thunder, I will give a defensive ball to Ryan Kerrigan. He looked motivated today. You know, he did have
2 sacks, right?
2 sacks, and he had a strip, of a quarterback. Right. So he had a decent game. So I'll give him that. And on offense, I guess Capri Bibbs. Capri looked like he knew he was auditioning for a team somewhere, right. And he looked like he was giving effort. And again, I think he's a pretty dynamic guy. So I think he was worthy. So I will give it to Capri Bibbs and Ryan Kerrigan, which I think were my same 2 game balls from last week, if I recall.
Nice. All right, so nice thing about going last, I didn't know this. You can actually think about it and say, "Oh, here's a good name," because I always go too early and don't really think this through. So, all right, for my defensive game ball, I'm going on the other side from you, Steve. I'm going with Preston Smith. We probably would not have gotten a touchdown if not for his pick. So, I'm going to give him a game ball just because of that. And then on offense, I'm going to go with a deep cut and go with Chase Roullier because I think he had a decent enough game at center. He's the only guy who I know didn't give up a sack. So he's got that going for him.
You're really stretching the bottom of the barrel when the center gets a game ball.
Center is the second most important position on the line. You know that.
Yeah, but how many centers get a game ball?
I'm giving one to one.
One now. Like I said, you're really reaching the bottom of the barrel when
one else really
get to the center.
Very well.
No.
Yeah. So with that, I guess I'll give one too. Now that I have the time to think of it, Morgan Moses too, by the way, and that's just not for today. It's for the entire season. The guy, I don't think he missed a game, or he may have missed one.
I think maybe when we do our season review, we should do like a yearly game ball award. Everyone picks.
Okay, fine.
Yearly MVP.
Yeah. All right, fine. Then I'll shut up. Then I'll leave it. I'll leave it at Trustway. All right. So with that being said, what we got planned for next week coming up? Will Wednesday be the review, or will that?
Well, we need to figure out what time we're gonna do it, but we're gonna have a season in review. We'll have a guest join us for that, and we're gonna do a playoff preview in that same show. We need to talk about when we're doing it.
All right.
It will be this week sometime.
All right, season review coming up next week. But thank you guys for listening to a tough Redskins defeat. Even though it was no further implications to the season, but it was still tough nonetheless. But appreciate you all for listening. Talk to you all next week. Peace.